Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, happy campers, light-hearted campers, and, well, even the melancholy campers. One and all, it's time to pull up a log beside the virtual fire and get comfortable and listen carefully to the good word at Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. And here, with pointy stick and virtual marshmallow skewered right there on the tippy tip, it's the man with all the best campfire stories. It's Matthew Dickerson.
Surely I'd have now a internally heated marshmallow cooking stick rather than a good old-fashioned fire.
Well, it's a virtual fire. It looks like a fire, but it might not be emanating any heat. And I reckon you've just, well done when bringing your internally heated pointy stick, your electric.
I think that's just right because it's a fine line, isn't it? You want to catch the marshmallow on fire, maybe just a little bit.
Oh, no. I reckon you've just got to get it browned, and that's it.
Well, I actually do a two-step technique. The first one is it catches on fire to get that first bit of sugar around the outside, so that's fine. You peel that off. And then the next layer, when it's a bit softer, that's when you just want to brown it ever so slightly. So could we do that with a virtual internally heated stick? I'm not sure if it would be quite the same.
Well, something to work on. We'll get the engineers going.
That's right. Well, we'll talk about that next week, maybe.
Well, in today's episode, we're looking into some of the legal curveballs being thrown about now that AI seems to have its fingerprint on everything. Look, how can we make it accountable, and how will we be able to make informed decisions if we cannot be sure where the message is coming from? And in another story, we'll let you in on the big opportunity courtesy of Neuralink, and we'll see how they're saving elephants in southern India. But to our first story today. The world of pharmaceuticals is about to get something of a shake-up. For some listeners, the morning routine involves more than a bowl of cereal and a strong coffee. My father-in-law used to joke about the lolly jar of medicines to chase down his toast and Vegemite. So in an era where you can pretty much 3D print anything, printing personalised tablets to streamline the morning routine makes perfect sense. Matt, 3D printing comes to the rescue once again.
And it does need to come to the rescue. It's actually a much bigger problem than I realised when you've got people that have got multiple pills to take in the mornings. And they did some surveys out of the UK. They said that 50% of residents are taking the wrong pills or forgetting or at the wrong time on their various pill regimes. And in the US, I'm not sure if they're clever in the US or they've got better techniques, but about a third of US citizens that are on various pill regimes get them wrong. And they're getting them wrong, not just a simple little, whoops, I missed that one today. It might be taking multiples of one or missing for a week or a whole range of things. Now, the best I've seen has been a little pill box that's got all the pills. Someone has to go through and put them in each
on
day.
A Sunday night.
That's right. Here's my weekly pills. Put them all in. And they've still got to get them right for each of those days. And then presumably when they get them right, then, today's Monday, open up Monday, there's the pills that I take, which still doesn't allow for the pills that you might need to take twice a day or once a day. It's just assuming you've got one-a-day pills or maybe have two separate containers for the morning and the afternoon. It all gets very complicated, which is confusing for people. So again, 3D print anything. We've talked about that, although my wife still isn't happy until I talk about a story where we're going to 3D print breakfast, lunch and dinner in a pill, because the amount of time we spend actually doing all of that, the average person spends 4 hours a day preparing a meal, eating a meal and cleaning up after a meal. Imagine that 4 hours a day back. So my wife wants the pop a pill for mealtime.
Easy as that.
Easy as that. We're not there yet, so I can't give my wife good news on that, but we can on pills 3D print a pill. Now, this sounds like the best thing ever if you're a drug lord. You just have one of these set up in your basement.
Already.
Well, probably happens already. You're probably right. But imagine setting that up in the basement and just popping out whatever pills, whatever drugs people want, illegal drugs I'm talking about. That's not the design of this. I'm sure the researchers are not thinking that's what's going to happen, or hopefully they've got some safeguards in place. Researchers at the University of Nottingham have come up with this idea of taking different types of pills, different drugs that might be needed, and 3D printing them all into one pill. So all you've got to remember is to get up in the morning and take that one pill. They've done some really clever things where they've actually got different release rates. So they've got different geometric patterns internal in the pill. So, for example, if it was a pill that you needed to take in the morning and then in the afternoon another one the same, they could actually design it so it would release that drug over the course of, say, half a day. Or if you've got some pills that you take that are different pills that have got different release rates for each of those pills individually, they can actually build all those into one pill. Now, I imagine this huge big pill. Remember
Something you've got to chew on.
The Princess Bride. Remember the Miracle Pill? That was a pill that Miracle Max created to bring Wesley back from being mostly dead. It had chocolate coating to make it go down easier, but it was a huge pill, which does seem fair enough, as it needed to bring back Wesley from being mostly dead. I imagine that with all these drugs built in there, they end up with this big pill, but most pills, the actual pill itself is not all made up of that particular drug. It might have some other sugar components or some other components built into it to help that slow release, for example.
Yeah.
So the actual active drug inside a pill is usually pretty small. So you can still combine different drugs into one pill and get something that's still small enough just to swallow in one go. So they've tested it so far. They've tested a bunch of different drugs in the one pill. And, for example, they did a range of customizations. They said, let's just try 55 different pills in one run. So away they went, and every one of those 55 pills they produced was different and customised depending on what each individual person needed.
Wow.
Yeah, so it would be as easy as that. Now, I don't think they're going to be in the basement of a drug lord, but I imagine they're also not going to be in your home. I can't imagine that would be a sensible thing to do. But I imagine at a pharmacy, for example, you go into a pharmacist and you say, here's my prescription for my 3 different drugs that I need. And the pharmacist says, sure thing, come back. We'll go and just activate our 3D printer and come back in an hour's time and we'll have your set of drugs ready to go that are customised for you. Don't share them with your friend. They're just going to be for you. And then you take those pills and you've got to remember one pill. So it sounds pretty clever from that perspective. I like the idea. I'm not sure how they're going to go from a legal perspective, because you can imagine all of these different drug companies, the big pharmas of the world, are doing a lot of R&D to come up with a drug that fixes or is for one particular set of symptoms or some ailment. And that's obviously copyright. That's obviously something they've got a legal hold on that for a certain number of years before it goes to open market. So you can imagine someone saying, can I just have the ingredients for that drug for our 3D printer? They might say, no, we're not giving out the ingredients for that. So whether it's going to be only when they get to generic status after, and I don't know how many years it is before you're allowed to have any company produce these pills, but whether or not companies are going to be happy with a 3D printer having all their ingredients, their R&D work after all those years. So
complications.
That's a legal issue. The research is just going from a technical issue. We reckon we've got it pretty well nailed at this stage. So not there yet, but it's going down the path.
Very cool idea.
It is a very cool idea.
So here's something a bit concerning for us. Consider there are no current laws regarding deepfakes. Now, that's a bit alarming. Technology has moved a bit too quickly once again, but now consider that there are no laws about using deep fakes in political campaigns. Now, if you can produce video footage of your opponent saying whatever, well, that could be just downright destructive. Matt, this is a world of chaos we're spiralling into, isn't it?
It is a world of chaos, and I can't believe that there's not some legal blockage to me producing a video of you in a political campaign saying, vote for Matt. He's a great candidate. Don't vote for me.
Yeah,
Surely.
but I reckon, not that long ago, it would have been pretty easy to spot a fake. And now it's only been less than 12 months that really this has become a major problem.
It has. So the Australian Electoral Commission has actually come out and said it's not illegal to produce a deep fake. Why even say that? Don't even mention it, okay? Just stay quiet about it. But they've come out. There was a parliamentary AI inquiry, and the commissioner from the Australian Electoral Commission said it's not illegal to produce a deep fake. Now, maybe there's some defamation there. Maybe if I had you saying don't vote for James, vote for Matthew, and said he's a great guy, maybe you could sue me for defamation because you didn't really say that.
Yeah.
So maybe there's defamation rules, but in terms of the Electoral Commission, no. Now, Electoral Commission's got lots of rules. When you print a poster, it's got to have little bits of writing at the bottom to say who authorised it and who printed it. If you produce a radio ad or a TV ad, there's all sorts of rules about the authorisation for that, but you don't see that. It's either very quick at the end of an ad where someone says, terms and conditions, or in very small writing where you're never going to take any notice of it.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
again, if there's a political opponent that says, vote for the other guy, gee, they've got some good ideas, they'll really make a difference to our country, then you're going to take more notice of that than you are of the little tiny disclaimer at the bottom of the ad or at the end of the ad. Multiply that by social media. So you produce these ads and you might run them on mainstream TV, but you might run them on some sort of social media, something where it becomes viral, and suddenly there's this ad everywhere. And then you say, that's not really me saying that, that's a deep fake. Well, your message is lost. Because
That's right.
meanwhile, 10 million people have seen you
The
saying
thing that's
something.
going viral, it's not you refuting it.
That's right. And the thing that's going viral is never the apology or the statement that rectifies it. It's too late then. It's all over and done with. So this is pretty interesting. We do see a bit where the laws of this country and around the world sometimes fail to keep up with technology, and this is probably another example of that. But we've already seen over in places like Pakistan, India, Indonesia, they've had some use of generative AI in their campaigns already. You remember that last year we talked about Joe Biden making robocalls. It wasn't really Joe Biden. And he was saying things that you wouldn't expect the president to say because it wasn't really him. It was a deepfake robocall. So we've seen that already. So it's going to be interesting given the fact that in Australia we might have an election with this crazy political system we've got for federal elections. It could be any time. It could be next month, end of the year. It's going to be before about July next year at the very latest. So sometime in the next year we're going to have an election, and these rules at the moment, as they stand, we could just have a crazy election of deep fakes everywhere. And you can imagine if one party is going to do it, then there's going to be companies out there saying, hey, the other guys are doing it, you better do it as well. So there'll be deep fakes everywhere. And I think you're spot on trying to spot those, trying to say, oh, that's obvious. Look at that. That's a deep fake. Because if you're really clever about it, you wouldn't have the deep fake making stupid, outlandish statements.
No.
You just
Very
have the
subtle.
that's right. You just have the deep fake getting it a bit wrong or saying things that didn't quite make sense, or you look a bit silly, and people would go, oh, I just said it the other day. He's lost it, hasn't he? Rather than, oh, obviously that saying vote for your opponent, that's a bit obvious, but just saying silly things or saying things that are a
just
bit
despair.
controversial.
We can't even trust our eyes anymore. Eyes, ears, or anything. Yeah.
Believe half of what you read and nothing of what you hear used to be the thing when I was growing up, whereas now, what do you believe? So anyway, there's a range of rules they might introduce. There might be some guidelines. There might be some pressure on the big tech companies, the Amazons, the Metas, the Microsofts of the world to say, can you just be nice about this and have some guidelines in place? But I'm not sure we can rely on big tech companies with those guidelines.
No, the cat's out. The Pandora's box is open.
It has indeed. So keep an eye out for all of that.
So still on the subject of AI, if you're an AI program and in need of a voice, I guess it's hard to come up with a completely original voice out of thin air. But then if you borrow someone else's voice, well, that's going to cause a bit of a stir, especially if you don't have their permission, which is exactly why Scarlett Johansson has her knickers in a knot. Matt, ChatGPT's Sky voice does sound a bit like the Black Widow.
And to be fair to OpenAI, I actually did go and try. I had a quick chat with ChatGPT and said, how can I change the voice when I'm having a conversation with you? And it gave me detailed instructions on how to go and click on this and choose that. And it said, and there are 5 options to choose from. And one of those 5 voices was Sky. Sky is the one that's in trouble for sounding a lot like Scarlett Johansson. So I went, okay, good. I want to go and listen to this. And then when I went in to choose one of those 5 voices, Sky was no longer there. OpenAI have said that they've removed Sky for the moment while they have a little bit of a legal discussion about it. It's based on, I think, the fact that in 2013, Scarlett Johansson was in a movie, or was she? Because she was only the AI voice in a movie, and the person that she was playing was her. Was the AI voice was known as her. So we assume it was Scarlett Johansson. She says it was her in the movie when she was playing her. So I think OpenAI said, well, that's pretty cool. Imagine if we had a movie that was a very popular movie and take the AI voice from that and then actually have that as one of our voices. Very clever. So they approached Scarlett Johansson and said, we've got a job for you. Would you like to be the voice actress for this? And she said, thanks very much, but no thanks. I'm okay. I don't really want my voice to be ChatGPT. That's fine. It's her voice. Go forth.
But
many months later, when they released a few new voices, including Sky, then suddenly it sounded a lot like Scarlett Johansson.
Someone didn't get the memo.
Well, it's interesting because when she said, hold on, I said no, and now it sounds like you've used it anyway. Now, this was the killer for me. OpenAI said, no, we listened to you, and there are lots of voice actors out there, so we got another voice actor, and they just happen to sound a bit like you. Now, we can't name this voice actor for privacy reasons. Now, what actress in Hollywood doesn't want to be named? What actress anywhere says, no, don't let my name...
any credit.
That's right. Don't tell people about my name. I could get some extra work if everyone knows my name, so please keep my name secret. And that's when, for me, alarm bells started going off when this unnamed actor that happened to sound like Scarlett Johansson said, please don't name me. Now, it could have been possible for them to just generate a voice. They could have said, let's generate a voice, maybe use some of Scarlett's voice as a bit of training, obviously not a nice thing to do. Or they could have legitimately got another actress that sounded like Scarlett. Either way, this is the problem we have. Can you tell us what really happened, OpenAI or any AI company? Well, we'll tell you what we're telling you happened, but is that what really happened? There'd be enough samples of Scarlett Johansson's voice out there from all the movies she's been in that you could get a pretty good sample of her voice. I'm pretty confident of that. So it is interesting. I don't know why they would need to worry about it. I've used ChatGPT in voice mode from time to time, and there's a voice there, and I don't take much notice of what the voice is or what it sounds like. I'm really just chasing information. It's convenient sometimes if I'm driving to have a chat with ChatGPT, which sounds a bit sad and lonely, doesn't it? But if I'm trying to find information on my way somewhere, it's an easier way to do it rather than type it in or ask someone when I get there. So you have that chat, but I don't really care what it sounds like. I'm just after the information. So keep an eye out on this. Who knows, James? We might have a legal suit on our hands one day soon when people say, I want a voice that sounds like James and Matthew.
Sounds like it. For 50 years, mustering cattle by helicopter has been a thing in Australia, but anyone who has seen it in action will attest it is truly an art form, albeit especially and spectacularly dangerous one. There is certainly nothing run-of-the-mill about helicopter mustering. A minor misjudgment can lead to a messy death, so skilled helicopter pilots are paid a lot for their artwork. But don't forget that this is 2024, and a world where drone technology can get the same job done cheaply without the risk of death. Drones are decidedly less heroic, Matt, but perhaps an important change is blowing in the wind.
Oh, yes, indeed, blowing in the wind. Crop dusters and helicopter mustering are two occupations that you don't expect to be in for a long time. They are very dangerous occupations. And I think the main danger is usually power lines. When you've got crop dusters who are flying fixed-wing aircraft to go and spray pesticide or some type of thing on a crop, or, as you said, mustering with helicopter, there are still power lines around, there's still trees around. Range.
They've got they're flying so low with a machine that's so powerful. And, tilting it at every angle and whatnot. Yeah, turning on a 10-cent piece, it's just, it's quite frightening, but it's, it seems very heroic.
It does seem heroic, that's right. And my brother who flies planes, not a professional pilot, just flies planes for pleasure, he always says height is his friend. So when you're flying a plane, if you've got height on your side and something goes wrong, you've got time to recover. When you're maybe 10 metres off the ground and something goes wrong, you don't have much time to recover. So pretty scary. But when you've got some of these huge properties that we're talking about, in outback Queensland, outback WA, you've got some way you need to be able to cover those huge areas. So helicopters are a common way to do it. Some people still love the traditional horseback. Even motorbikes are pretty handy, but motorbikes, I've done a bit of stuff on motorbike mustering, and you're always looking out for stumps on the ground or just some corrugations, large rocks, anything that you know is just lurking there. Sometimes you're just so conscious of that, so you can have some spectacular accidents with motorbikes as well. But a drone, there's a guy up in Queensland named Luke Chaplin who is a fourth-generation grazier. So he is well and truly aware of the problem with large properties. And so he said, well, I reckon drone should be a go. So he formed a company called Sky Kelpie, which is quite nice because a lot of the Kelpies are the dogs, obviously, they use for mustering.
Not to tradition.
Yeah, that's right. So Sky Kelpie. And so he's been using Sky Kelpie. He's been using drones for his own mustering. He's got other companies, other customers up there that have been using it. At the moment, they say about 100,000 head of livestock are regularly mustered using Sky Kelpie. So he's obviously getting into the marketplace up there. But just recently, they had the first live remote muster using drones. So they had some people on a property in Cloncurry in Queensland, and several hundred kilometres away on the Gold Coast, they had the pilots. So they're sitting there. The drones themselves are up on the property. We'll bring in this cattle for you. We'll round them all up and bring them in. Meanwhile, I'll sit there just beside the beach on the Gold Coast and take it easy and be able to fly those drones from a remote position. Now, obviously, you've got to get CASA on board because you need to make sure that you've got permission to be flying these several hundred kilometres away. Good connectivity you need at each end. And you've even got to the point now where they've got docking stations, charging stations at the property, so you can fly around. Oh, the battery's down at 10%. I'll just go and fly, dock, charge up, and off I go again and keep mustering the cattle. I'd imagine you'd probably have multiples of them, so you could do that and always have at least one out there mustering the cattle. So remote mustering, imagine a farmer sitting there on the Gold Coast, sitting there in Paris, what the heck, wherever, and going, I'll just be with you now. I just got to go and muster the cattle. Go to the room, connect to your drones, bring the cattle in, have some remote gates maybe that you can open and close remotely, why not? And then you bring the cattle, right, that job's done now. Where were we? Just duck down to the Louvre and have a look at some artwork. So it sounds pretty impressive. So overall, it's
taking all the
good.
romance out of it.
It has a little bit. I can just see Banjo Patterson, Clancy the Overflow or Sky Kelpie drones. It doesn't sound quite the same, does it? But you're paying about 10 grand for these drones, and they're equipped with thermal cameras, which the main reason you want those is that you're trying to pick up other animals as well. You might be mustering cattle, but just seeing smaller animals, foxes, that type of thing is a bit easier with thermal cameras. But again, 10 grand, you'd pay that easily for a motorbike if you're using that. Yeah. You'd pay that in a few hours for some helicopter mustering. But even cattle dogs, people are paying 35 grand for cattle dogs now. For good cattle dogs that have got good skills, then you're paying a lot of money for those now. And I think you'd probably, for 10 grand for a drone, you'd probably find the ongoing costs of that would be much less than a motorbike, a helicopter, or even dogs. The cost of that is really just the electricity. Had some solar panels hooked up somewhere near your charge, and away you go, you'll be able to charge it up pretty much for free. So sounds pretty good. I suppose crashing is the only problem.
A whole lot less risk of death.
For you individually, your drone might still crash, but it's less likely. It's less likely to hit power lines, for example. And while you're sitting on the Gold Coast, relaxing, flying it around, much less risk of personal injury for you, definitely. So sounds like it's pretty good. And I think that it's probably the younger farmers coming through that will love this, but they're actually finding some of the older farmers are going, you know what, this doesn't look too bad either.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, so they're jumping onto it.
Had enough summers there trying to chase cattle around the outback. Well, it's only been a couple of months since the first effort, but the folks at Neuralink are already bored and ready to move on with Mark 2. They're currently on a recruiting drive, and they've thrown open the doors to find the next Buzz Aldrin of brain-computer interfacing. So, Matt, have you been thinking about tuning yourself into the Matrix or what?
I haven't actually, no, but I do like the fact that Buzz gets lots of credibility for being the second.
The second guy, yeah.
It's a standard catchphrase now. So, obviously, the first one went, okay. If you remember, it was Nolan Arbour, the first gentleman who had Neuralink, and he could do things.
I didn't remember that name. I was actually trying to remember that name.
Right.
But yeah.
But he was a 30-year-old from Texas. He was paralysed during a diving accident, and he's now got the ability to play some games, control a mouse. He can even do some writing on his computer, which was set up specifically for him, by thinking about things. So it seems to be working okay. He's not controlling everything yet. He can't do fine motor controls or fine controls of individual items with his brain, but he can do some basics. And I like the idea of playing a game, not, again, a shoot-'em-up fast action game, but just some basic games where you've got to move up, down, left, right. He can think about moving up, and lo and behold, his cursor moves up. So That's pretty cool. So not going too bad, but, yep, they want more than one. They want 2, they want 10, they want 20. They want hundreds of volunteers. I assume before at some stage there'll be a product that you can go and buy that you'll say, please pay a lot of money to this organisation to go and install Neuralink in your brain. But at the moment it's still about trials. It's still about humans who are volunteering to be part of this scientific experiment. I don't know what they're looking for. I have no idea what the CV should read like. Obviously with the first one they had someone that was paralysed, so that made sense. Do they want to get an able-bodied person? Do they want someone that they say you don't need to be paralysed, you just have to be willing to be experimented on? I don't know. I don't know what they're after. I'm not thinking about it personally at this stage. I want to get a fair few down the track. Number one, number two. No, I want thousands in the number before I'm thinking maybe that's a good idea.
Before you want to wire yourself right in, hardwire.
And do I really want to do that at all? I'm not sure I'm convinced about that at all, but I'm pretty convinced I don't want to be number two anyway, put it that way. So they want to have 10 volunteers by the end of this year. And there is a competitor. There's a competitor called Synchron, and they actually are saying they're already up to 10 already.
Oh.
Yeah. So not with Neuralink. They've got a slightly different product, but the same concept where it's a BCI, a brain-computer interface.
They just weren't quite as showy about it as Neuralink was.
Well, one of the things you've got on your side, if you've got Elon Musk on your side, you know you can generate publicity out of just saying something. He's had a tradition. I keep talking about a comparison with Thomas Edison. You make these outlandish claims about things you're going to do, work out how to do it. Meanwhile, you've got some good publicity around it. You've got people that are going to come on board to back it, or probably pretty easy to get volunteers. I don't think they'll have any shortage of volunteers. I think they're going to be pretty
considering
okay.
There was a big lineup to go to Mars.
Yeah.
And so there's still people with their name on a waiting list to go to Mars.
So people with their name on a waiting list to have things stuck in their head.
Stuck into their brain.
Yeah, it does scare me a bit because you kind of only have one brain and you kind of only have one chance of getting it wrong.
I know, yeah.
So anyway.
And then once you've got it, I mean, is there really that great a benefit? I don't know. We'll wait and see. I want to hear all the glowing reports of, I've got a Neuralink chip in my brain, and I love it. I'm never looking back.
As long as it's not a deep fake saying that. As long as it's someone real saying that.
I can't trust it. Everyone's been gaslighted on everything these days. So
that's right.
This next story just may be enough for me to convert from Android to Apple. Apple have set themselves up so that you can play now all the best classic retro computer games on their devices. It's time for a bit of a nostalgia fix, Matt. What am I saying?
You think of Mad Max nostalgia? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, no.
So what I love about this is that modern games I just cannot compete with my kids on. I don't know whether it's because you feel like you've got to go through all these set scenes. You feel like you've just read the Thornbirds by the time you actually get to play the game.
Yeah.
And then the game seems so complicated with so many things, and I'm sounding really old now. I realise as I'm speaking.
They've come a long way since having to jump barrels with a little plumber.
That's right.
Climbing ladders and jumping barrels.
Beautiful glory and simplification is jumping barrels with a plumber. So I think...
And those are the days where you just clock a game.
Yeah, that's right.
You get to 1,000 points and it'd start over again.
Yeah, that's right. If you were good, you could clock the game.
That's
like pinball machines, you could clock them until some genius said, why don't we just add an extra digit? And we went, you can't clock it now. Look, it says 1,000,000 on there. So you can now play some of the games that I like to play with my kids because A, I understand these games. They're pretty simple. B, I can beat my kids at least for the first 10 minutes because I know how to play that game and they don't until they get the hang of it and then they eventually beat me. But we're talking about things like Frogger, Mario, Pac-Man, Sonic, Spyro the Dragon, these old classics now on an Apple device. It could be your phone, it could be an iPad or Apple TV, so you can play it on a decent-sized screen. Now, the graphics aren't better. So the graphics are still very pixelated. All that happens when you see it on a big screen like your big screen TV in your lounge room is that all those pixels are just larger. So they're still very pixelated. On your phone, it might look a bit better because obviously they're very small pixels.
What were they, with 8-bit or something like that?
Yeah, most of those previous ones, those early ones were 8-bit and we went, that was colour at least. So it wasn't just mono because the old Pong, if you remember playing Pong on a TV, that was just mono.
Well, the jump from that to like 8-bit and playing Donkey Kong for Pong, it was.
No wonder we're excited.
The thrill.
That's right. And the gameplay that compared to Pong, which for those that don't know, Pong was literally a paddle on the left, a paddle on the right, and a ball that went between the two, and that was it. That was the gameplay. But it would spend hours. We'd try and make sure we master that, or at least you're playing at someone else who'd be trying to beat someone else. But this is all to do with basically having an app you download. So RetroArch is one of the apps you can download. There are others as well. And essentially that gives you the ability to play other games inside that app. So it's not quite an emulator, but it's similar to an emulator where you can then play or it emulates things like Atari or Commodore or Nintendo, Sega and Sony. So it actually emulates those inside that. So you're playing those games as if you're playing on one of those devices and one of those consoles. So it's very clever the way it does it.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, a bit of a nod to the amount of computing power that you've got in a modern iPad or smartphone, that it can actually just emulate those things in the background while you're playing these games. So you've got a fair bit of computing power to even do that. So rather than a whole Sony PlayStation, for example, you just have that tucked away in an emulation mode. I thought that's pretty clever. So I'm looking forward to it. I haven't tried it yet, but I've got some kids. I've got to go and see my kids shortly at an event. So I want to actually download that and have it ready so I can say, hey, let's just play a game together, guys.
You're going to have to get your brush up on your skills.
Make sure I understand.
Because you don't want to get beaten in the first go.
No, that's right.
Dad, I thought you said this was your thing back in the day.
Right. I've definitely got to practice up a bit, haven't I?
Hitting wildlife while you're travelling at speed, there's just no good in it. Whether you're dodging kangaroos on outback highways or tangling with Canadian moose on a mountain pass, that heart-in-the-mouth feeling as a hapless wild animal strolls onto the shoulder of the road is a universal trauma. There's that momentary realisation of the inevitable and the resignation of fate as to what happens next. Spare a thought for the train drivers of Tamil Nadu in India, who have that experience in slow motion whenever a 4.5-tonne elephant wanders onto the tracks. Matt, this is a bit like what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
Yeah, you talk about kangaroos. Kangaroos make a bit of a mess of your car.
Yeah.
But normally you can continue to drive on. But a train and an elephant, that sounds a bit scary, doesn't it? Because the sad part is there's been 36 deaths of elephants that have occurred over the past decade on this one particular part of train track. So you think, well, that's pretty sad for those elephants, and probably there's not a huge population of those elephants. But then I started thinking of the train hitting a 4.5-tonne object.
Yeah.
That's probably not a good outcome for the train either.
Nah.
So overall, not good for the elephants, not good for the train, not good for people staying nearby.
Everybody loses.
Everybody loses. So how can we stop this? And in particular, this one section of track is on the intersection of some elephants' migratory routes. So you've got essentially lots of elephants going across there, and they probably don't have a full understanding of what a train track on the ground means. They probably don't think that means something's going to come hurtling along here at 100 kilometres an hour. They just think there's something they've got to step over, and that's about the end of their thought process.
It's clearly a major issue. And it doesn't matter if you're in a train and you spot it from 500 metres away or a kilometre away or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's going to happen, it's going to happen,
Yeah,
and you just can't pull up.
So back in 2021, the High Court mandated in India, they need to put measures in place to prevent elephant deaths on train tracks, on these tracks in particular. So the Forest Department has now installed 12 towers along these couple of tracks, and those 12 towers have got AI cameras. They've got thermal and visible light imaging, and so they're just looking out for the shape of an elephant. So a large object like an elephant. It can pick up smaller objects as well. It can pick up humans even. But what it's really looking for is elephants. That's what it's trying to spot. And when it does spot them, then automatic alerts are sent to train drivers, to officials around the area, and the train drivers know to slow down. So since they've actually had this in operation, which was only a couple of months, and it was actually pretty cheap, the whole system they put in for $1.3 million. So that didn't seem too bad from me thinking about what was involved there. But since they've had this in place, they've had 400 instances of elephants being spotted, and then trains can slow down around that area. Now, 36 doesn't seem like that big a number compared to 400 spottings, but it would just be a lot of random luck for those 36 elephants that finally got hit. So you can imagine there's lots of elephants going across there, and every now and again it happened to coincide with the time a train's going along.
Well, just think about the train driver as well, right? So, and having to just be ready for this, to get some sort of earlier warning. Yeah, that'd be fantastic, surely.
Well, surely as you're going along, you'd absolutely be focused so hard on looking out for the elephants, trying to stop the train in time. Because if you knew that there was an elephant on the track or near the track up ahead, okay, well, let's just slow it down and go along at a much slower pace. And, okay, there's an elephant. I can stop if I need to, or it's off to the side. I can continue on. And presumably the elephants aren't silly enough to walk onto the track while the train's going past. It would be on the track. Elephants don't move that fast, so they can't get off the track in time, presumably. Now, they've got another new railway system they're introducing called Guardrage, which is interesting because I was over in India recently, and the guide that we had, we did a guided tour through India, the guide that we had was Guardrage, and he did say it was a fairly common name. So they've chosen Guardrage for the name of this AI-based system. I'm not sure if they've done that because it's so common, so they want to make it feel like it's part of normal society, or whether someone who's involved, his name was Guardrage. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's called Guardrage, and this whole system is basically trying to work out ways to reduce animal deaths on roads, on railway lines, focused on basically making sure there is a reduction in animal deaths. In particular, I can imagine cows, because cows, of course, are sacred. So in India, so you wouldn't want cows to be a part of the destruction and death as well. There'd be huge mourning for anyone that actually was driving a train or a car that actually hit and killed a cow. So that's part of the whole process as well. Sounds like an interesting and good use of AI. So I try and look out for good uses of AI from time to time.
We'll get something in Australia for the kangaroos.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Kangaroos are so tricky.
Yeah.
Kangaroos keep bouncing up and down there. That creates a big problem for AI to spot kangaroos because they don't just stay in a consistent track. They go up and down, and that makes it harder for systems to pick them up. So, but someone will come up with a system.
AI, get better.
That's right. Fix it now.
In the landscape of 2024, FaceTime and Zoom are now well and truly commonplace. Video calling is now so easy, even my parents can do it. And while I'm on the subject, hi, Mum and Dad. A shout out there, even though I know you're not listening because you haven't worked out how to download podcasts yet. Anyway, that says something about how far video calling has come since its sketchy days back in the late 80s, I think it was. Matt, video calling has come a long way in 35 years.
It has, and I just found this example where I thought it'd be worthwhile talking about this with a bit of historical context. Mitsubishi Visitel video phone was released in March 1988.
Oh.
So we had video telephones back then. Now, when I say we had them, there was a product that was available. And I thought of the old Richie Rich comics. I'm not sure if you remember the video
Richie
calls.
Rich. Yeah.
And it used to be, look at that, how cool is that? Now, Richie Rich came out in 1953. Sometimes with cartoons, we often talk about the Jetsons. There's different cartoons we talk about. For a cartoonist, you don't have to have it in existence. You just have to think of it. So I think cartoons are quite clever in some of the stuff they come up with.
Yeah.
Back in 1953, thinking about a video telephone call, wow, how advanced was that? Mitsubishi obviously got onto the bandwagon and said, well, we'll introduce the device. And I watched a picture of it in operation, and it was a fairly large handset that sat on your desk. And there was a screen there, maybe it was a 5 centimetre square screen or thereabouts, so you could just peer and see this little tiny mono-colour picture of a person at the other end. And obviously, the person at the other end had to have the identical handset. So obviously Mitsubishi was trying to sell these in pairs. So it didn't really take off. They needed people to buy the same system. There was no standard protocol for it. And you needed to have some way of transmitting this low-quality video image between the two sites. We didn't have this universal internet thing that could transmit lots of data around at the time. So I think, well done to Mitsubishi. They had something that was way ahead of the game. AT&T also tried something called a picture phone. Sony had a Vizio phone. They weren't good enough. The data there wasn't enough data, bandwidth availability. And there was still a lot of work to be done in progressing with codecs and compression algorithms to get to the point where we could do what we do now with lots of clever algorithms to do that. But I do love the fact that way back in 1988, before really anyone was thinking about video calls, someone came out with it. The one I thought that might have changed the game was in 2007. If you remember the TV series called 24, Jack Bauer. It was 24 hours in the life of Jack Bauer.
Kiefer Sutherland, I think it was. Yeah,
exactly right. Yep. And there was an episode in 2007 called Day 6, and in that they had Cisco telepresence. Cisco paid a lot of money to be the telephone provider in this series because every time they made a phone call, it would focus in on the Cisco logo while they're making the phone call. But they had a thing called telepresence, and they were using that for video calls. And I remember there was one episode where Noah Daniels from the US version of the service made a video call to his Russian counterpart, Yuri Suvorov. And this was this wonderful video call with this telepresence around, and everyone was saying, wow, look at what Cisco can do. Before we know it, video calls will take off. And of course, they didn't in 2007. It took a pandemic for us to finally say, hey, maybe this video calling is a really good idea, and to the point where your parents are now doing video calls without thinking about it, FaceTime and Zoom and Teams and all sorts of things. So maybe
Funny how necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it?
Absolutely right. So maybe the problem for Mitsubishi back in 1988 wasn't their technology. They just needed a pandemic in 1988, and that would have then progressed video calling to the point where we are now.
We'd all be talking about our Mitsubishi phones.
That's right, exactly right.
In keeping good health these days, there are a lot of personal parameters to check on regularly. Far beyond that of cholesterol and sugar levels, there's your hydration and your gut health, your muscle tone and your core strength, detoxing your liver and flushing your kidneys. Well, add one more to the list, folks. There's a new smartphone app for screening the condition of your, get this, your neurons. Matt, in the spirit of leaving no stone unturned...
You made me feel very guilty about all the things I'm going to go and do to my body now. I better go and check so many things, James.
Yeah, we've got to check stuff.
Oh, we do. There's too many things. And this is just another one of those things. There's an app called Brainy. Now, what they're doing with Brainy is they're taking a lot of people that have got some neurological conditions. We're talking about Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, and they're doing testing, watching the way people's eyes move that have got these various conditions. Then they go and do a same sort of tests with people that don't have any neurological conditions. And by training our good friend AI on all these different movements, they believe a 60-second eye movement test is all that's required to determine whether you've got some early signs of some of these neurological conditions. If you can get some early indicators that something's wrong, then you might have a better chance of slowing down the progress. We don't really know how to stop or cure things like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, but there are certain things we can do to slow down the progress. If you find it earlier, then you might have 15 years of quality of life left, maybe compared to only 5 years of quality of life left if you don't pick it up early enough. They've done so far 25,000 tests. This is on 25,000 different people, 25,000 tests to just get enough information. And this is the power of AI, that you get all this data. You could give this to humans and they go, oh, maybe when they move their eyes in this way, that could be an indicator. AI says, no, I've identified that these people that have got Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, this is how they move their eyes. And people that without those conditions move their eyes completely differently. Therefore, someone that moves their eyes like this, I'm saying they've got a marker, a biomarker to show they've got one of these conditions. So it's quite clever in terms of the way you can use AI to crunch data. So there's 20 ocular biomarkers that have been identified during the AI testing so far. This app isn't available yet, but this is the sort of thing, give it a year, maybe 2 years at most, and this will be the sort of thing you'll be in at doctor surgeries doing. Another year after that, you just have an app on your phone that you look at and say, how's my neurological health? Yep, you've got a score of 98, continue on. Or, no, your score's a bit low, go and see someone for getting some professional help. So this is where maybe we can make some change. And the other one I thought of is there's so much focus now with concussion protocols with sport.
Oh, of course.
And you see doctors and they get taken off for a HIA, a head injury assessment, and you see doctors who, I don't know, put some fingers up and count the fingers or whatever they might do. And it's a fairly basic assessment. I'm sure the medical staff would tell me they've got some good techniques there, but you're still relying on a human assessing a human. Imagine if you're concerned about someone that's had a head knock, come off, look at this app for 60 seconds. That'll tell me straight away whether you need to stay off for the rest of the game, stay off for the rest of the week, rest of the month, or get back out there. It's okay. You're fine to continue on your journey. It sounds pretty incredible, again, just by using that power of AI.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. We're in the future already. And that's all there is today, ladies and gents. As the digital embers die out on our virtual campfire, that's our signal to move on. Well, congratulations on your delivery of yet another absolutely cracking Tech Talk, Matt.
Well, thank you. I'm really keen now to be on a few different drugs so I can get a 3D printed pill. I'm not on enough drugs at the moment. I've got to get on some more drugs because I love the idea of that.
Well, maybe that, and I did think about this later, maybe we can set up something where you can give vitamins. Yeah?
Sure, why
you
not?
You print out one tablet for vitamins rather than taking a list of vitamins.
Well, maybe even just have a quick little test, some sort of blood test, and then, right, you're deficient in these certain areas. Here's your customised pill to give you the various vitamins and minerals that you need as part of your dietary process. So there we go. That'll do me. I won't worry about going and relying on my conditions to deteriorate and needing some other drugs. I'll just go for the vitamin option.
We're at the Jetsons already. Well, I'm still not sold on the Neuralink chip, but I'm prepared to get my neurons scanned. I reckon that's worth a deeper look. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Talk with Matthew Dixon, folks. It's all freshly ground with full body aroma with notes of salted caramel. That's good tech talk. A great way to start your day or wind down a cool autumn evening by the fire. I'm James Eddy, and it's been a pleasure to deliver to you our tidy little podcast once again. We hope that you've been able to take a couple of things away with you today, but don't worry, there's plenty more where that came from next week. Hope to see you then.